How dare the maid skimp on cooking? Theo yelled at me, anger in his voice. The word maid made my heart turn cold. It's been 2 years since Theo and I got married. All this time, had he seen me not as his wife, but as a maid? Tears blurred my vision. It wasn't the shouting that startled me. It was the frustration and sadness that made me cry. You think crying will get you off the hook? Theo's sharp voice followed. Then, something was thrown at me. Even through my teary eyes, I knew it was dangerous. Instinctively, I crouched down. Something flew over my head. And then it crashed against the wall, breaking with a loud sound. Cautiously, I looked to see what it was. It was a beer bottle. What if it had hit me? I felt a deep fear. And then, I thought. I can't take it anymore. I can't stay with Theo. Just leaving isn't enough. I need retribution. He must understand the humiliation and pain I've endured. As I stood up, resolved, I heard footsteps behind me. My name is Iris Smith. I'm a 29-year-old housewife. It's been 2 years since I married Theo, but we haven't been blessed with children yet. Instead, about 6 months ago, we started living with my father-in-law, Cody. Last March, his wife, for me, my mother-in-law passed away, leaving him alone. Can't leave Dad alone in the house. Right. After discussing this, we invited him to stay with us. We're in an apartment now, but we're planning to buy a new house next spring. Theo's income is decent, and we're living comfortably. I have to be happy. Otherwise, Theo wouldn't be satisfied. You really are frail, aren't you? Theo said, more in disbelief than concern. I managed to sit up in bed. I'm sorry. It's okay. I'll take out the trash for you, he said, leaving the room. Theo helps with the housework sometimes. Like today, when I'm not feeling well, he'll step in. Hey! It's the burnable trash today! Don't get it wrong! I shouted, but Theo was already gone. That's right. Theo just doesn't get the essence of household chores. He carelessly puts out the wrong kind of trash on burnable trash day and doesn't even think about sorting it. When he brings in the laundry, he just throws it in the room without folding it. He only does the chores that are visible from the outside. That's why in our neighborhood, Theo is known as the ideal husband. You're lucky, Iris. With Theo's good income, you don't have to work, and he even helps with the chores. Well, yeah. I couldn't tell them the truth. I just returned a strained smile. It's true that Theo's income isn't low. And thanks to that, I don't have to work. But he only gives me a portion of his salary. I'm saving the rest. You manage this month's expenses with this amount. I was puzzled at first. The amount Theo gave me was just barely enough. There were times I thought about getting a job. You should stay home. Theo dismissed my offer with annoyance. But we might run short this month. I'll keep up with the chores, please. No. Theo never agrees. At first, I thought he was concerned about my health. But then I realized that wasn't the case. As evidence, Theo once said, if you work, it'll look like my income is low. That's not. You enjoy ruining my reputation, don't you? I'm sorry. I hung my head and realized. Theo didn't want me to work just to maintain his reputation. Another day, he told the neighbors. She's frail, so I have to help her out. She can't manage the household chores alone, let alone work. That's tough. You're doing great, Theo, supporting your wife like that. The neighbors praised Theo. In contrast, they thought less of me. Your husband's struggling, you should bear with it a bit more. Right. Whenever I show a hint of weakness, that's the response I get. Theo isn't lying. He's just exaggerating the truth. So I can't argue back. I can only force a bitter, self-deprecating smile. And yet, Theo alone can't perfectly manage the household chores. He's mixed up the trash again. Late at night, I sneak out to the trash area to check. I can see the misplaced trash without even having to open the bags. I take it back home with me. I act only after confirming Theo is asleep to avoid his anger. I put out the correct trash on the right day and sigh in relief. The next day, Theo wakes up with a smug look on his face. See, because I'm helping with the chores, you have it easy, right? Yeah, thanks. I can't tell him the truth. It would hurt his pride. As Theo happily eats his breakfast, I force a smile and say, "Hey, about your father. What about him? His legs are getting weaker, and he's having trouble with the stairs in our apartment. Maybe it's better if he goes to a facility. He's my dad." Theo's smile fades. "What do you think of my father?" "I think he's a respectable man. Worked until retirement, holding important positions. That's why I want him to enjoy his retirement." "So, you want to dump him in a facility? Speak your mind. You just don't want to take care of him and are trying to get rid of him now, right?" "That's not." I was about to deny it when. "Good morning." "Oh, good morning." I hurriedly stood up from my chair. My father-in-law was walking towards us, leaning on his cane. I helped him move, supporting his body. "Listen, Dad." Theo began proudly. "She wants to put you in a facility because she doesn't want to take care of you." "That's not what I meant." "A facility, huh?" My father-in-law sighed. "Might be a good idea. At my age, stairs and steps are tough. I do long for a barrier-free place." "Dad," Theo pleaded, saying, "Dad, don't say that." He's been using his care for his father as a point of appeal to the neighbors. He took on visible tasks like accompanying him to the hospital or going for walks. Yet at home, he doesn't pay any attention to him. Even now, Theo remains seated. "Next year, we'll buy a house and live together. We'll make sure it's barrier-free." "Sorry, Theo." "It's okay." Theo laughs like a dutiful son. But his father's expression is far from pleased. He sees through the act, knowing his son's concern is just a performance. "Theo always liked to play the part of the top student." "Huh?" My father-in-law said after Theo left for work. He'd use his friends as stepping stones to stand out. Never thought he'd still be like that at this age. "It's okay," I said, forcing a smile. It felt more like I was convincing myself rather than addressing my father-in-law. He's trying to help us in his own way. "I'm sorry, Iris," my father-in-law said, looking down. I didn't know what to say. "Let's save up for a new house," Theo had suggested right after we got married. I agreed without much thought. Now, I regret it. "Please, we really need more money for this month. Can I have a bit more for the expenses?" "What are you talking about?" Theo responded coldly to my plea. "It's money we need for our dream. Not a penny can go to waste." "It's not a waste. Food, utilities, no matter how I calculate, it's not enough." "That's because you're being too lenient," he declared. "Think harder. There must be something you can cut back on." But I was at a loss. What else could I sacrifice? I was wearing clothes I bought years ago and had decided to only get my hair cut once every 6 months. Even with groceries, I bought discounted items and used beans to bulk up meals. There's no luxury in our life. Perhaps the only excess is Theo's nightly beer and snacks. Thinking this, I spoke out. "What about Theo's drinks and snacks? That's me rewarding myself for working hard." "Oh, right." I nodded, thinking I never had a moment to reward myself. I would love to have a dessert like pudding. But there's no money for such luxuries in the budget Theo gives me. "Anyway, managing the finances is your job. Do your best." "Yeah, I'll try." I thought I was already doing my best, but I couldn't say it out loud. He wouldn't listen anyway if I said. Besides, he's saving for our dream of a new house. That dream will soon be a reality. Theo is working hard for that. "I'll do my best." "That's the spirit," Theo replied with a satisfied smile. "I'm gonna take a bath. Can you get my change of clothes ready?" "Got it," I said, taking his jacket from him. At that moment, I was struck by a realization. Theo's jacket smelled of perfume. He doesn't wear perfume. Then why? "Iris? What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said with a forced smile, covering up my turmoil. Inside, I was near panic. Why would Theo's jacket have the scent of perfume on it? Had someone been close to him? A woman? Who could it be? It could be a coincidence. Maybe someone wearing perfume was near him on a crowded train. I thought so. But the more I thought about it, the more my suspicions grew like a balloon. I couldn't convince myself. Theo might be cheating. I had reached that conclusion. Despite Theo working hard every day. Doubting him seemed terrible. I thought so, but I couldn't stop. I thought about confiding in my father-in-law, but decided against it. He already lamented Theo's true nature. I didn't want to trouble him further with Theo's issues. This was something I had to bear alone. If I'm going to keep doubting. A few days later, with a sense of desperation, I contacted a private investigator. I hoped for Theo's innocence to be proven. While wishing for that, I requested an infidelity investigation. The results came quickly. I hesitated to open the envelope, struggling with my decision. Finally, I pulled out the documents. No way. I was speechless. There were photos of Theo, looking intimate with a young woman. Photos capturing their intimate moments were enclosed. Theo. I collapsed in tears. Theo. Why? I looked at the photos while crying. Incredibly, Theo had been visiting the construction site of our new house with his mistress. What was he thinking? As I read further into the investigation results, it turned out that most of the money Theo claimed he was saving was actually being spent on his mistress. He makes me live like this, yet he's with her. I see now. A wave of emotions surged from the pit of my stomach. It was a mix of sadness and anger. I couldn't bear it anymore. When Theo comes home today, I'll show him these results. I decided. But it felt pointless. What would confronting him with the truth achieve? Theo would surely be furious. He probably never gives in. What would I do then? What did I want to do with him? I don't want to break up. I blurted out involuntarily. Despite his betrayal, I still couldn't bring myself to hate Theo. I loved him so much, that's why I married him. But what about him? Does he still love me? I don't know. But I didn't want to break up. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything and continue living with Theo. In our new house, with my father-in-law. And maybe eventually have children. I dreamt of such a life, but my thoughts crumbled with my tears. It can't be true. This can't be happening. I felt nauseous as I cried. I locked myself in the bathroom. The nausea wouldn't go away. After taking some medicine, I barely made it to my bed. It was already evening when I looked at the clock. I have to prepare dinner. But I couldn't move. Theo would be home soon. What should I do? In desperation, I made a decision. I'm sorry. I'm feeling sick today. I couldn't cook, so can you make do with this? I said this to Theo as he came home, observing his reaction. The dinner table was laid with frozen ready-made dishes. These were mainly things I had stocked up to satisfy my hunger at lunch. Pasta and hamburgers. They must have been Theo's favorites. However, Theo glared at me furiously. Don't mess with me, Theo had said in a low, grumbling voice. What do you mean by a maid skipping cooking? He shouted. His loud voice, filled with anger, made me cower. Tears streamed from my eyes. Not out of fear, but frustration. Maid. So, that's how Theo saw me. Not as his wife, but just as a working maid. You think crying will get you off the hook? He shouted sharply, grabbing something and throwing it. I instinctively crouched down. Crash. The sound of something breaking. Turning around, I saw a beer bottle had hit the wall and shattered. The remaining contents slowly stained the floor. I've had enough. I suddenly thought. I can't stay with Theo anymore. But just leaving wasn't enough. Theo had called me a maid. Then, I had the right to ask for compensation. Compensation, in the name of retribution. Just as I was about to stand up, I heard footsteps from behind. What's all this noise? It's none of your business, Dad, Theo said dismissively. But my father-in-law saw the shattered beer bottle on the floor and seemed to understand everything. His face turned as fierce as his son's. His usual gentleness was nowhere to be seen. You raised your hand against your own wife. What are you doing? I had no choice, Theo said, his voice turning weak. He hung his head like a scolded child, casting his eyes around. His gaze turned to me. As if expecting help, but I had no such obligation. Enough, my father-in-law said, crossing his arms and watching Theo. He was unable to say anything back. Even Theo seemed to realize that throwing the beer bottle was a mistake. If it had hit me, he could have been arrested on the spot. No. It's not excusable just because it didn't hit. The fact that Theo threw the beer bottle is undeniable.
Iris, thank you for everything. But I can't let my son treat you this way anymore. Could you please leave him?
Dad!
I was planning to do that.
I replied, showing my respect with a salute to my father-in-law.
Thank you for everything until now, father-in-law.
Hey, Iris! Your maid is quitting today. Goodbye. I said formally, then stepped out into the hallway. I began to pack my belongings from our shared room.
Goodbye, goodbye.
I repeated to myself. With each repetition, the last of my love and attachment to Theo faded. This is right. I had come to see Theo as less than a stranger. Left behind were the numerous humiliations he had caused me. I would have to carry these memories for the rest of my life.
What will I do now?
I muttered, almost simultaneously as Theo entered the room. He was flustered. Hey, Iris! You're not seriously leaving, are you?
I am.
I'll file the divorce then. Don't take what my father said seriously. You're not feeling well, right? Just rest.
So, I would be failing as a maid, right?
I replied. My voice was cold. Theo took a half step back, startled. You're upset about the maid comment?
Upset or not?
I said, continuing packing.
That's your true feeling.
Well, yeah, but a wife and a maid are similar, right? Both handle household chores and support someone who works outside.
Right.
I paused for a moment. I then glanced at Theo.
You're looking down on all housewives, not just me.
Why would you think that? Theo yelled. Like a child.
Iris, tell my father. We're not breaking up.
I can't do that.
Why not?
Because I'm serious about leaving you. Theo was speechless. I resumed packing.
Theo!
My father-in-law called out.
Come back here. We need to talk.
Give me a break. Theo reluctantly left the room. I sighed.
I'll go back to my parents' house for now.
I concluded and left the apartment. My sudden return caused a stir at home.
This is terrible.
My mother frowned after hearing the story. My father even wanted to contact Theo. Perhaps he tried to yell at him, but I stopped him. I never wanted to hear Theo's voice again.
What will you do now?
I don't know. I had no savings, as life had always been a struggle. The only money I had was a little left from my days as a single office worker.
But I won't trouble you and Mom. I'll find an apartment and move out. Stay here.
My father said, almost pleading.
Dad. As a man, I'm ashamed. My own daughter going through this. I can't let you live alone with all these worries.
You're exaggerating. I laughed, but my father's face was serious.
Stay for us, Iris. Okay.
I agreed, my smile fading. Tears I'd forgotten started to roll down my cheeks. My mother hugged me. And I cried out loud, clinging to her. The next day, I filed the divorce. After mailing them to Theo, I felt a sense of relief. Theo called soon after, but I didn't answer. A few days later, my father-in-law called. His voice was a mix of concern and uncertainty.
I'm sorry for my son's actions. No, it's okay.
I was grateful to have seen his true nature early on. I had answered honestly. In the past, I might not have blamed Theo for his questionable behavior. I convinced myself he was just tired or finding some other reason. I had been turning a blind eye to the truth.
Theo doesn't want to divorce, but don't worry. I'll take responsibility and free you from my son. Thank you.
I said, putting my hand on my chest, though we were talking on a phone.
I have a proposal. What is it? I'm thinking of leaving Theo. I plan to find a facility and move in. That's so sudden. It's something I've been considering for a while.
His voice grew somber. Understandably, his son's misdeeds were the cause. Yet, he hadn't forgotten his original purpose for calling.
The reason my son hasn't let me go is the pension, and above all, the inheritance, right?
Yes. His voice was heavy.
Theo won't leave me because he wants to ensure he inherits my estate. You must have heard something from him.
Yes, Theo often mentioned it.
He said once the inheritance comes through, paying off the house loan would be a breeze.
Theo had sworn me to secrecy, but it didn't matter now. After all, he had squandered the savings on his mistress. The funds for the new house must be insufficient. How would he cover that? He was counting on his father's inheritance.
I'm thinking of writing a will. Please don't talk about such grim things.
No. I have no intention of leaving any money to Theo. But Iris. He hesitated briefly and said, I want to repay you. I'm thinking of leaving my estate to you.
What are you saying?
I raised my voice. It was natural for family to take care of each other. Yet, he was thanking me. Perhaps it included compensation for the humiliation I suffered from Theo. He wanted to convey that, which was why he had called. But I couldn't accept it.
Please stop. I can't accept it. I don't even want to think about what happens after you're gone. I have cancer.
What? I almost dropped my smartphone.
You're joking, right? It seems Theo hasn't told you about my hospital visits. I thought it was just rehabilitation for your legs, but...
I shuddered at the horror. Theo was aiming for his father's inheritance. I had thought it was an unrealistic notion. His father was still in his 60s, weakened but seemingly healthy. But the reality was different. Theo was expecting his father's imminent departure and the inheritance to fall into his lap.
Would anyone honestly want to leave an inheritance to such a son? If that's the case...
The pieces of the story started to fit together in my mind. My father-in-law was furious. Quietly but surely. He had been waiting for an opportunity to retaliate against his son. And now, he had found an ally in me.
I understand. I'll follow your wishes, father-in-law.
Iris.
But in return, could you help me with something?
What is it?
I want to give Theo and his mistress a taste of their own medicine.
I said honestly. My father-in-law had opened up to me. So now it was my turn to be candid.
Theo plans to move in with his mistress into the new house after our divorce. That foolish son. But before that, I'm going to make sure he breaks up with her.
I had a plan. And if my father-in-law supported it, there could be nothing more reassuring. 3 days later. Theo called me furiously.
Iris. What did you tell my father?
What do you mean? I feigned ignorance, even though I knew exactly what he was talking about. His voice trembled as he spoke.
My father is going to disinherit me. If that happens, all his money
won't go to you. I said calmly. Theo's voice became frantic.
Not just that. He met with Mary, my girlfriend, and persuaded her to break up with me. He told her about how I threw a beer bottle at you and called you a maid. But all of that is true, right?
I thought to myself that Theo had it coming. He looked down on women. Once his true nature was revealed, any woman would leave him. Especially someone who extracted money from him like water. I couldn't believe she loved Theo for who he was, but rather was attracted to his financial appeal.
Mary said she didn't think I was that kind of person. But you are that kind of person. What's your problem?
Theo lashed out. But I didn't care. I was the one who had informed my father-in-law about the mistress.
You're bold, Theo. What? Choosing a mistress from the same apartment complex.
I was utterly dismayed. It was a clear sign of how little he regarded me. But, if it weren't so, my father-in-law, with his bad legs, wouldn't have been able to meet the mistress.
You're the one who instigated my father. Why would you think that?
Ignoring my question, Theo continued angrily.
This is roundabout. If you wanted me to break up with Mary, you could have told me directly. Instead, you embarrassed me by having my own father expose my shame.
That would have a bigger impact on you. I replied calmly. There was no winner's satisfaction. There was only emptiness.
You knew and sent my father to humiliate me further.
Even if that's true, what of it?
You're disowned by your father. The inheritance you relied on won't come. Give up on the new house.
I said, ready to end the call. Theo had nothing left. His mistress had left him. And his dream of a new home had vanished.
Wait. What now? Is that all? What do you mean?
I was genuinely perplexed. Theo continued.
The recipient of my father's inheritance, it's you, right? Quite the turnaround from a maid to this.
You still think of me as a maid?
Of course.
He retorted, trying his best to hurt me. He was miserable and wanted to drag me down with him. Such spiteful thinking must have been at play. It was just as I thought.
Theo.
What? You're really predictable, Theo. But thanks to that, you've helped me. I've recorded this conversation. I'll use it when I demand alimony from you. What? He exclaimed in shock. Don't joke around. The more you talk, the worse it gets for you. That's the kind of person you are. Damn it! Theo sounded utterly frustrated. Alimony? After taking the inheritance, you still want to bleed me dry? Yes. I wouldn't be satisfied otherwise. To be honest, the money didn't matter. All I wanted was an apology from him. It should have been enough. You greedy woman. He finally said in a fit of sour grapes, ending the call. I sighed. He still doesn't understand how wrong he was. Muttering to myself, I spread out the documents on the table. Evidence of Theo's infidelity. Copies of a diary I kept, detailing the cruel actions Theo had continuously taken against me. I gathered these and sent them anonymously to the company where Theo worked. Then I found out what happened to Theo from a desperate call he made to me. Just stop it. My reputation is in tatters. I can't stay at my job, and I'm being ignored by the neighbors. But it's all true. If you wouldn't admit it, let others judge. That's what I thought. And they judged Theo as the bad guy. Still, he continued to defend himself. Now I'm unemployed and you want alimony? I can't pay that. Really? But you had that savings. I reminded him. He seemed taken aback. I spent all that money on Mary. I don't have a penny left. That's pathetic. Mary too had left him after all his devotion. I wonder what Theo, who can't cook for himself, looks like now. Now, unemployed Theo must be in a pitiful state, holed up in his apartment, which couldn't last long. Once his food runs out, he'll have to go outside. And when he does, he'll face the cold stares of the neighbors. All at once. Come back to me. Why would I? If you come back, it'll clear up the misunderstandings the neighbors have about me. Misunderstandings?
That's right. It's all your delusion.
His tone softened.
You were weak and couldn't work or manage household chores properly. I was supporting you, Iris.
So? I felt a cold wind blow through my mind as I spoke. That's how you treat me as weak and try to owe me a favor. I don't want to owe you a favor. I won't be fooled again. No matter what you say, you can't undo those words. I declared, referring to the day he called me a maid. Our relationship as husband and wife had ended then. It could never go back to how it was. Goodbye, Theo. Iris. Wait, Iris. Theo's desperate shout echoed in my ears. I frowned and ended the call. My father-in-law contacted me. The facility you recommended is great. I'm glad. He had achieved his dream of barrier-free living.
I don't have long left. I just want to live comfortably. Cody.
I informed my father-in-law that I would visit him soon. Theo tried contacting me several times, but I ignored him. Eventually, it became bothersome, so I changed my phone number. After convincing my worried parents, I now live in a different city. My apartment is smaller than before, but the rent is cheaper. I was enjoying my freedom. Theo had assumed I couldn't work, but that wasn't true. Since working every day was physically demanding, I started a part-time job with an adjusted schedule. The manager was understanding about my health condition.
That's tough, but I think you're doing great, Iris.
Thank you. I replied, truly happily. Holding my paycheck, I felt elated. I could live on my own strength. I earned this myself. The days when I was controlled and forced to depend on Theo. I had escaped the nightmare. Though I often missed work and my salary was modest. It was enough to pay rent with some left over. With what I have now, I can survive. I've really gotten the hang of saving money. I mused, not sure if I was impressed or dismayed. In any case, I was good at saving. I would live on my own. Or perhaps, not entirely alone.
Oh.
There he was again. A customer who always came at the same time. He was quiet, only saying thank you at the checkout. Yet that single word made my heart flutter. He would look at me intently, then awkwardly shift his gaze.
He must like you, Iris. Really?
I smiled, hoping it was true.